right, everyone, welcome to the channel and happy Friday. I, for one, am glad it's Friday. I don't know about all you, but busy week at work this week, so I'm glad to have a couple days here to recover coming up this weekend. NFL preseason is starting. EPL is in full swing. Going to get a chance to watch my Wolves play Fulham tomorrow morning. La Liga is starting in Spain, so we got all kind of a good European football, American football this weekend. So again, happy Friday. Appreciate all of you who watched the first video, and if you're tuning in again, appreciate that as well. You guys, you mean the world to me. And if you liked the first video, please hit that subscribe button below. Again, really trying to grow the channel. So the more subscribers, the merrier. It's gonna really help me as I'm trying to grow this thing. So today, on today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about some books. Went to Barnes & Noble the other day. Got quite the haul here. A couple of these, one of these books is, I'm going to show you a book that I'm reading right now. A couple of these books are books that I have read earlier this year that I just finished. And the reason why I'm including them today is because, first of all, they were both incredible books, probably two of the better books that I've read this year. And the other reason I'm going to include them here today is because a couple of the books that I bought here were inspired by these books that I read earlier this year. So there's a little bit of a connection there. So kind of want to run down through this list here with you, give you some recommendations, and please comment below anything you're reading right now. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to look into it. I'm always looking for new books, new authors, new subjects, stuff like that. I always want to make sure I have a book in my hand. I'm always trying to read at least one book at any time. So comment down below what you're reading right now, and then also, based on these books that I'm going to talk about here today, any recommendations you have for me. Like I said, I'm always looking for new things to enjoy. So please, if you think of anything that you think I might like, please let me know. And again, love to hear what you're reading right now too. So let me start with the book that I am currently reading. So this one goes to, I mentioned the other day that I'm a guitarist. I've played guitar for about 20 years. I love to attempt to write my own music, which is easier said than done. Anyone that has any type of artistic sensibility, whether it be drawing, painting, music, whatever it is, there's creative hurdles you have to get over, right? And so I bought this book here. It's called How to Write One Song. This is by a guy named Jeff Tweedy. If you don't know who Jeff Tweedy is, you may have heard of his band. He's in the alternative rock band Wilco. They were kind of a popular '90s band. They had some really big songs. You might remember the songs like Jesus, Etc. or California Star, Heavy Metal Drummer. Those were like three of their bigger songs. You can look those up on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you want to go. But so he's the singer, the guitarist, and the main songwriter for Wilco, and he wrote all three of those songs. So he's a very, very successful musician and songwriter. And this book is really, really interesting to me because, like I said, there's the well-known kind of phenomena of writer's block, and for myself, when I'm trying to write lyrics, if I'm attempting to write a song for myself, I don't know where to start. I don't know where to go. And, I get discouraged by that. I ended up just, usually tossing it in the garbage. But one thing that this book is really good about, that has really kind of been eye-opening to me and has really helped me, is the idea of inviting creativity in, right? I think a lot of people think about creativity as like this spontaneous thing that just kind of like inspiration just happens, right? And I think that is true to an extent. But what Jeff Tweedy talks about in this book is giving yourself over to the creative process, right? So having a process in place to say, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write for 15 minutes, whether it just be like free form writing or I have an idea in my head that I want to play with, and just letting the words come without any expectation of what's going to come of them, and then reflecting back on that and seeing what you got from it. So I think this book is very much teaching me that there's a lot more to the creative process that you can control than a lot of people might think. The creative process, oftentimes, I've tried to read other books like this before, And it's often, I find it to be very, very ambiguous and very, very, very vague. The thing that I really like about this book is that it talks about how to develop a creative process for yourself, and it also gives you like specific tangible exercises that you can do. So things like, pick a term or pick a phrase and try to develop, 6 bars of lyrics using that phrase, or try to develop this idea over the course of over the course of a song. And that's been very, very helpful to me, because it puts it in a much more almost like an academic context, right? Where it feels much more like learning a lesson or learning something that's a little bit, like I said, a little bit more tangible. So this is a book that, as you can see here, I mean, I'm only about halfway through, as you see my my bookmark. That this is my book. My son made this for me, so this is my bookmark that I use. But anyway. So I'm only about halfway through this, but I'm really, really enjoying it so far. So anyone out there who is, into music, it doesn't even have to be music. Anyone who's interested in hearing or learning more about a creative process, I think this is a really good book to check out. So that's the book that I'm currently reading. Now I'm going to get into the books that I bought last night when I went to Barnes & Noble. First up here, this is a book that really caught my attention. I've seen it reviewed online. I've seen the author here, Ryan Holiday, get interviewed in a couple of different places. This is a book called The Daily Stoic, and it's about the concept or the school of thought called Stoicism, which Stoicism is an ancient school of thought. Marcus Aurelius, way back in ancient Greece. Kind of he's one of the main starters, the main proponents of this school of thought. So it goes back thousands of years, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and Stoicism really, if you look up the definition, it really just kind of boils down to you can't control what happens to you, but you can only control how you react to it, right? And it has the four pillars of Stoicism are wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. So the thing that's really interesting about this book is that it's designed for daily reflection. So every page in this book has a date that accompanies it, right? So the idea is you read one page per day. There's a short little, as you can see here, short little passage for each day. And it's just, again, for daily reflection. So I am going to start reading this book here today. So today's August 12th. So I'm going to start on page here 241. I'm pretty certain, no, not even pretty certain. I'm 100% certain. This is going to be the first book I've ever read in my life that I'm not starting on page 1. So it's each month has kind of a theme here. So the theme for August is pragmatism. So approaching things with having a measured approach to things. So I'm really curious to see. I don't know really anything about Stoicism other than the couple of articles that I read, which kind of inspired me to get this book. So I'm really excited to see what this book does for me and kind of some of the teachings in here, and hopefully I can get a lot from it. This is a book to me that is, I talked in my first video about, this program or this channel. We're talking about books, we're talking about music, but it all comes back to that whole mental health and being healthy mentally. And I think this is a book that has been recommended by a lot of mental health professionals. So I'm really, really excited to read this one. So this is going to be one here where I'm just going to read, I'm going to do it as prescribed, a page a day, every day, until I finish it. And I hope to glean some lessons from it. So I'll keep you all updated as to what I think about that one. This one here, this is another one that is kind of in the mental health lane. We'll get to some other more history and historical fiction stuff here in a minute. But this one here is called Radical Love: Learning to Accept Yourself and Others by Zachary Levi. Now I got to be honest, Zachary Levi, apparently he's an actor. If I look on the back of the cover here, it says here he's the star of the American television shows Shazam, American Underdog, and Chuck. I'll be honest, I don't watch a ton of TV outside of live sports, so I've never heard of any of those shows. I had no idea who this guy was. I still have no idea who he is outside of this book. But I heard some clips of an interview of him, and I kind of connected with what he was saying. And whenever I saw this book in Barnes & Noble last night, this quote here on the inside jacket really struck me, really kind of fit with my own sensibilities. I'm going to read this here to you real quick. It says, "Silence is one of the major contributing factors to people feeling inescapably stuck in their depression, their anxiety, their stress, and their fear and their shame. If you're suffering in silence, you're not going to find a solution for it because nobody knows. And we are not capable of getting ourselves out of a lot of these issues that we are facing mentally and emotionally, particularly in today's society, by ourselves. We need help. We need each other." That could be like, that right there, that could be the dissertation for why I started this YouTube channel, right? So I really connected with that quote. It goes back to what I was saying in my introduction video, right? Where leaning into your hobbies really helps me, but also being vocal about when you're struggling and talking to people and reaching out about that. As it said in that quote, right? You can't solve your problems by yourself. Nobody's going to help you if they don't know that you're going through a rough time. So I'm really excited to read this one as well. I don't know. I have one more here that I'm going to talk about too. So I bought 3 books last night. I don't know which. Actually, I'm sorry, 4 books last night. I don't know which one I'm going to read first. This is a strong contender though, so I'm not sure yet. But anyway, I'm very excited to read this one as well. Seems like it's obviously a more traditional structure than the Daily Stoic, where you're supposed to read 1 page a day. This is one, more standard traditional structure there. So excited to read that one. Okay, so we're going to shift into a little bit more of some historical stuff, some historical fiction. This first one here actually is not fiction. It's just a history book. This one here, called After the Romanovs, Russian Exiles in Paris from the Belle Epoque. I hope I said that right. I don't know how to speak French. Through the Revolution and War. So, anybody who doesn't know who the Romanovs are, or the Romanov dynasty, the Romanov family was the family that ruled Russia for over 300 years. They came into power in 1613. I got some notes written down here. I did some research on this. They ruled Russia from 1613 until 1917. They were overthrown by the Russian Revolution, which took place from 1917 to 1923, which kind of coincided with World War I. And actually, the Romanov dynasty being overthrown is what led to the creation of the USSR and the Soviet Union. So they were the family, they were the dynasty that immediately preceded the USSR. So what happened when the Romanovs were overthrown was that the aristocratic government in Russia was overthrown by the working class, right? The Bolsheviks. If you ever read any like George Orwell, like Animal Farm, anything like that, that's kind of what that book was based on. And that, again, led to the USSR. So it was the idea that this family and the other prominent families in Russia, the aristocrats, they controlled what the working class felt was too much of the wealth and the power. And so the working class rose up and overthrew them. Now, when that happened, a lot of the aristocrats in Russia, for fear of persecution, they fled the country. A lot of them went to Paris. So this book is about some of those Russian aristocrats who went to Paris and actually ended up contributing a lot culturally to Paris and to France in general throughout the rest of the 1900s. And so I don't know a ton about Russian history. I don't know a ton about what I'm going to read in this book, but this is very interesting to me. And actually, the reason why I bought this book, the reason I got interested in this book is because of a book here that I read earlier this year. Now, this is historical fiction here. This is not a true story, but this book here is called A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. And I have to be honest, this was probably the best book that I have read this year. I've read about, I think I have it tracked on Goodreads. I think I've read about 22 books so far this year. This is one of the best, if not the best. Now, this book directly relates to the Romanov, this After the Romanov book. So in this book here, the main character of this book is a gentleman named Alexander Ilyich Rostov, who he is one of these aristocrats who was, and let me rephrase that. He was from an aristocratic family, a powerful family in Russia, and the start of this book takes place in 1917 at the beginning of the Russian Revolution. Now, Alexander in this book, the main character, he is saved from persecution, from death, because he had written a poem before the revolution in 1913. He wrote a poem that really connected with the working class that they really loved, that they kind of held up as a beacon of hope, right? For like kind of as the revolution was gaining momentum. And so because of that, once the government was overthrown, instead of him being sentenced to death or whatever the case may be, he still had to be punished. He was still an aristocrat. What he was sentenced to was house arrest, and he lived in a hotel. So this book is about the story of his life. It goes from 1917 all the way up through, I believe by the time the book is over, we're in the 1950s. It's been a couple months since I read this. I don't remember exactly what year we're in when the book ends. But anyway, it takes place over the course of 30 or 40 years, and that entire time, he does not leave this hotel. And so it's a really interesting book. It's a cool look into it's a very, even though it's fiction, it gives you a cool window into that time in Russia. And honestly, I learned not only about history here, but also about Russian culture. It's not a country I know a ton about. Obviously, it's in the news a lot right now with the unfortunate things that are happening over in Europe with Ukraine. But outside of current events, it's not a country that I know a ton about, and so I learned a lot from this book. Even though it's fiction, I thought it was really cool, and I really appreciate books like this that are fiction. They have a narrative to them. They have a good, well-written story, but they teach you a lot too. So historical fiction like this is one of my favorite things to read. So really enjoyed this one. This is one I would highly recommend. Anybody who's into fiction or historical fiction, or even if you're just into well-written novels, great character development, great, very interesting story, a lot of great characters in this book. Very, very highly recommended. All right, I'm going to go back to the fourth book that I bought last night while I was at Barnes & Noble. And this one here is also another history book. This one here is The Shortest History of England. This, I have to admit, not the type of book that I would typically buy. I will say I have become intrigued by the history of Great Britain and the United Kingdom, partially because I watched The Crown on Netflix, which kind of drew me in, kind of got me intrigued by the royal family and the lineage there and how that goes back. And so this book kind of caught my eye, and it also related to another book that I read earlier this year, which we'll talk about here in 1 second. Don't want to get ahead of myself, but just I flipped through the first couple pages of this book after I bought it, and this goes all the way back to 55 BC, all the way to Caesar and the Romans who occupied what would later become the United Kingdom way back in that time. So. This is cool to me. I'm interested to read this book because as an American, and a lot of people here in America, I think, we think of history as the last 225 years, 230 years since, or I guess closer to 250 years now, when, America became a country, right? To us, that's kind of to a lot of people in America, at least, that's kind of when history begins. But we're talking about thousands of years of history here, and I think that that applies to all of Europe. It applies to Russia, where history goes back way longer than what we have appreciation for here in the States. And so I'm curious to hear. I'm most curious. I want to understand how the current British royal family became the current British royal family. I know the Windsors. They've been in power I shouldn't say in power. They've been the head of the monarchical state there for a very long time. And so I'm curious to see. I know I have to get through a lot of history before we get to that point in this book, but I'm really excited to read this nonetheless. the other reason why I bought this, and it ties back into The Crown as well, this is another book I read earlier this year. I finished this one about a month ago, and this one was also very good. Kind of another history book here. This one's called Traitor King, which is the story of the former King Edward VIII, who later became the Duke of Windsor. He was the King of England in 1936, and he abdicated his throne, essentially meaning he gave it up. He didn't want to be king, which is a very, very, very rare thing for someone in a royal family to do, and it became a very big controversy over in the UK. If you watched The Crown, you're familiar with this storyline. They dedicated a whole episode to it in the first season, where he abdicated his throne, and then Edward and his wife Wallis Simpson were in and out characters in and out of the show there. So the whole kind of genesis of this was that, so this is him here, and then this is his wife who he married, Wallis Simpson. Wallis Simpson was an American, and she had been divorced twice before she met King Edward. The British Church had a rule at the time that they would not marry someone who had been divorced previously if their former spouse was still alive. That applied to Wallis Simpson. So they presented King Edward with this choice. It was either you marry Wallis Simpson or you remain king. You can't do both. If you're going to marry her, you can't stay king. And so he chose love over being the king. So he abdicated his throne. They were exiled to France, got married in France, and this book is about their lives, kind of about how they led this kind of listless existence. He didn't really know what to do with himself after he didn't have any royal duties. The UK government, they still assigned him some crown. It was very few and far between. Like his trips back to Britain were very few and far between. The monarchy did their best to keep him out of Britain. He was effectively exiled for most of his life. They gave him different jobs. Like he was the governor of the Bahamas for a while when the Bahamas was still a colony of Great Britain. But so it's a lot about their lives. It's a lot about the tension between him and the rest of the royal family after he abdicated. And this is an incredibly well-written and well-sourced book. I mean, there's there's letter correspondence in here of like from Winston Churchill to members of the royal family, Winston Churchill to presidents of the United States like Dwight D. Eisenhower and other things like that. So this is a fantastic, very well-written book. Andrew Lownie, the author here, highly recommend this if you're into the royal family at all or just history in general. Another great book. So Andrew Lownie was the author there. I just realized I didn't read the authors of these other books. So The Shortest History of England here, this one was James Hawes. I'm excited to read that one. Amor Towles wrote the Gentleman in Moscow. Again, probably the best book I've read this year. Highly recommend this one. After the Romanovs, this one here was written by Helen Rappaport, which I've never written a book by. I have never written a book. I've never read a book by her, so I'm excited to read this one. And then Zachary Levi, as I mentioned, Radical Love. The Daily Stoic here, this one was written by Ryan Holiday. I respect Ryan Holiday because I saw an interview of him, and in the interview, he was wearing an Iron Maiden shirt. So he's my guy. I respect that. I can't wait to read this one. And then, as I mentioned, How to Write One Song. This one's Jeff Tweedy of Wilco. So these are all the ones that I've read already, and this one that I'm currently reading. Highly recommend. 2 thumbs up. Go get them if you're interested in history. And these other ones that I've just bought here recently, I'm really looking forward to diving into and getting started. So just wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of an update of what I am reading right now and what I'm going to start reading here over the next couple of days. Again, it's Friday morning. I hope you all had a great week. I hope you all have a great weekend. Go be genuine. Go be your best self. Again, if you enjoyed this video, please comment down below. Hit that subscribe button. That would be a huge for me as I'm trying to grow this channel. I love you all. Appreciate you all. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.